Quivering Desire. Chapter 7. Unleashed Passion. I was back to myself that Sunday morning, composed, capable, radiant in my blazer and heels, walking with the measured grace of a woman who owned the room. It was the second and final day of the seminar, and I carried the weight of my title with ease, greeting familiar faces, exchanging pleasantries, commanding every interaction with quiet confidence. No one would have guessed that just hours earlier I had been breathless and undone, losing myself in something far more profound than I'd planned for. I had gone home in the early morning light, washed away the scent of the night, and pieced together a story about where I'd been. Then I returned to the hotel, wearing professionalism like a second skin. But inside, something was different. Something had been touched, shaken loose. I wasn't the same woman I'd been before this weekend, and it wasn't until late morning, as I stood laughing lightly with a group of visiting reps, that it happened. A colleague I'd known for years, who knew my quirks, my tells, my moods, smiled and said, "You're glowing today." That one word, glowing, it lingered in the air too long. It hit me like a crash of warm waves against a fragile shore. I froze for a heartbeat, and in that stillness, it all came rushing back. The way he'd held me like I was something sacred. The raw need in his eyes. The way I had finally let go of everything I'd been gripping so tightly. I was reliving it. Every touch, every whispered word, every moment I'd chosen to stop pretending. I laughed it off, of course, said something coy, but inside I felt exposed, raw, undone. Like the glow they noticed wasn't from a good night's sleep, but from being seen, truly, completely seen. And though I carried on with the rest of the morning, speaking on panels, networking with polished charm, a Pandora's box had been cracked open, and there was no putting the memories, the sensations, the fire, back in. I excused myself to freshen up, ducking into the quiet sanctuary of the hotel restroom. My reflection stared back at me, composed, flawless, poised. But I saw right through it. Beneath the mascara and carefully applied lip gloss was a woman teetering between her need and her better judgment. I turned on the tap, letting cold water rush over my hands, trying to absorb the heat that still lingered from the memory of his touch, his voice, the way he had looked at me as if nothing else in the world mattered. But everything did matter. Everything I had built. My name, my role, my image. And this, was a threat to all of it. I knew what was happening. I was hyper-aware. This wasn't just infatuation. It was hunger, dangerous and unrelenting, and I needed to get it under control before it spilled into the one space I could never afford to corrupt. The office. Tomorrow we'd be back in the real world. No hotel rooms, no elevators humming with anticipation. Just glass walls, open desks, board meetings, and paper trails. I had worked too hard, carved my name too cleanly into the space I held there. I couldn't let this follow me back. But it wasn't that simple. Because I needed him, not just in the way bodies need each other, but in the way storms crave wind, in the way secrets beg to be whispered into skin. And that need was dangerous. That need could make me reckless. That need could cost me everything. I closed my eyes and took a breath that burned my lungs. What I needed was clarity. But clarity was a luxury that desire doesn't allow. I dried my hands and stared again at the mask I'd have to wear. The truth settled like lead in my stomach. If I felt anything like this tomorrow at the office, I was going to do something I'd regret. So what now? "Maybe just once more," whispered the voice in my head, draped in silk and bad intentions. "One more time, and that's it. You'll get it out of your system." But that was a lie. I knew it. Just like I knew that logic didn't stand a chance against the memory of his breath on my skin. I gripped the sink edge and closed my eyes. "Jeez," I muttered under my breath. "Get a hold of yourself." I straightened, smoothed my dress, fixed my hair, professional, composed. But underneath, a ticking bomb laced in silk and secrets. I left the washroom with a plan: to breathe, to regroup, to padlock the box with professionalism and get through the day. But the moment I stepped back into the seminar room, a colleague tilted her head and gave me a look that cracked the veneer I'd tried so hard to reapply. "You okay? You don't seem yourself." Not myself. If only she knew. I nodded vaguely, muttered something about needing air, and slipped out before I said too much. I was halfway down the corridor when fate decided to mock me. There he was, tall, calm, that familiar presence that made everything in me jolt. My heart kicked up like a racehorse at the gate. "Hey," he said, voice too warm, too casual. "You all right?" I could have laughed. Was I all right? I was unraveling thread by thread, and he had no idea he was the needle pulling it all loose. He tilted his head. "Do you want to lie down?" And there it was. The invitation disguised as concern. An opening I had both dreamed of and dreaded since Friday. But something in me, something I didn't know I still had, rose and took the wheel. "No," I said, gently but firmly. "I just need some air. I'll be fine." He smirked. That slow, knowing curve of the lips that made my stomach knot. "With the way you look right now, you'd be lucky to make it to the exit without collapsing." I rolled my eyes, but I could feel the heat in my cheeks. He stepped closer, and instinctively, I leaned into him as he steadied me. His touch light and effortless, but it lit something inside me that had only been smoldering seconds ago. I shouldn't have needed his help. But there I was, shoulder to chest, letting his hand wrap around mine like it had every right to. "I'm not feeling myself," I said. And for once, my mouth honored my brain. It wasn't a lie. When you're dangling on the edge of desire and disaster, even partial honesty feels like an act of valor. The stronger I wanted to be, the weaker I became. And now, with him right next to me, breathing the same air, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just resisting him anymore. I was resisting myself. The moment the elevator dinged, I snapped out of my haze and realized I had walked in the opposite direction of fresh air. Unconsciously, I hadn't been seeking air at all. I had been walking straight into the fire. His room was quiet, dimly lit, cooler than I remembered. Or maybe it was just me who was burning up. He guided me to the bed, pressed a bottle of water into my hand with that careful tenderness that should have soothed me, but only fanned the ache. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear and kissed my forehead, soft, lingering, reverent. "I'll head back down," he said, voice gentle. "But if you need anything at all, call me. No hesitation." I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak. He walked to the door. Left. The door closed behind him. 1 second. 2. 3. By the 4th, I was calling. My voice was barely above a whisper, but the words were fierce. "Come back. Now." I stood. Or tried to. My knees buckled slightly, and I caught myself on the edge of the bed. Just in time, the door swung open. He was there. Breathless, concerned, ready. His hands reached for me, steadying me like I mattered more than anything else in the world. And in that moment, everything clicked. The no had been weakening me. The restraint, the distance, the denial. I had worn them like armor, but they had started to crack the moment he touched me at the elevator. Saying yes wasn't surrender, it was power. Because the second I let go, I came back to life. I stood up straight. My body wasn't trembling anymore. My eyes locked onto his like I finally saw clearly. He looked at me like he wasn't sure what I needed, but I was. "I don't want to talk," I whispered, stepping into him. "I don't want to think. Just make me forget the rules." He hesitated, searching my face for doubt. "No," I cut in, my voice firm, clear, unwavering. "I've never felt stronger." And I meant it, because something had shifted. That slow unraveling I'd felt all day, the heat, the confusion, the ache for control, had settled into something solid, something real. This wasn't weakness. This was the moment I returned to myself. Fully, fiercely. He felt the change, saw it in my eyes. And what came next wasn't tentative or cautious. It was honest. Both of us, finally, completely honest with each other. He moved with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing someone, really knowing them. Every touch deliberate, every moment held like it mattered. And I didn't hold back this time. Not an inch. I led as much as I followed, gave as much as I took. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, the office and the titles and the careful calculus of what this might cost me, all of it dissolved. There was only this, only us, only the terrifying, glorious freedom of wanting something and letting yourself have it without apology. When it was over, I laughed. Quiet, disbelieving, almost drunk on the afterglow. A laugh born from somewhere raw and bright. Half awe, half what the hell just happened. All of this, from a simple compliment. One offhand remark about my glow, a harmless comment, had triggered an avalanche. And now here I was, glowing, tangled in him, and somehow completely reborn. Neither of us moved. There was no need. His arm looped around my waist like a tether, his breath warm against my neck. I didn't want to rush, didn't want to speak, because nothing we could say would make more sense than the silence now curling around us like a second skin. Sweaty, breathless, holy. Like whatever storm we'd just walked through had washed something clean. His heartbeat raced under my palm, quick and heavy, the last tremor of the chaos we'd just weathered. It made me smile. That his body was still reacting to mine, even in the stillness. There was something sacred about this moment. A lull, like the ocean pulling back after the wave. No pressure to speak. No promises looming in the air. Just the soft, grounding rhythm of his chest rising beneath my cheek, and the weight of his hand moving in slow, lazy circles along my back. Not to ignite. Not to tempt. Just to remember. My legs stayed thrown over his, our limbs fitting together too easily, like puzzle pieces that had been waiting for this moment to snap into place. There was no shame, no reaching for the blanket to hide, just the warm, weightless haze of having been completely undone by someone and not needing to apologize for it. I tilted my head and looked up at him. His eyes were half-lidded, and there was something dazed in his expression, like he was still somewhere in the wreckage of what we'd just created. He looked at me like I was both the fire and the water that doused it. I laughed, soft and breathy, the sound trembling against his collarbone. "What?" he murmured, voice gravel and silk. "You," I whispered, hiding my smile in the curve of his shoulder. "Just you." He chuckled, low, hoarse, rich with that afterglow that sits somewhere between disbelief and satisfaction. His lips brushed the crown of my head, a kiss so gentle it barely registered. And yet somehow hit deeper than the ones that had come before. Right then, wrapped in him, all heat and heartbeat and skin, I felt the most dangerous kind of safe. No guards, no masks, nothing held back. I knew it couldn't last forever. Reality was out there, looming beyond the walls, waiting with questions and consequences. But here, now, with his hand on my back and my breath still tangled with his, I let myself stay, still glowing, still his. even if just for now. End of Chapter 7. If you're enjoying the story, this is the tamed version. If you want the full, unedited, Quivering Desire, every heat, every detail, every moment we had to leave out to keep it clean for this platform, grab your physical copy and enjoy the uninhibited version.